welcome to another episode of the Why Not Today podcast, where we have real conversations about business, growth, mindset, consistency, community, and taking actions on the things that matter most. Like, why not today? I'm your host, Leslie Kane. After 30 years of mentoring, coaching women in business, I've learned this. Most women are not lacking ideas or ambition. They're overwhelmed, overthinking, overworking, and trying to do too much alone. That is what Why Not Today is all about. Through this podcast, workshops, coaching programs, and the Why Not Today community, I help women entrepreneurs take consistent action with confidence so they can grow their business with more clarity, momentum, and less overwhelm. Because success is not about doing everything. It's about focusing on what matters most, building simple systems, and continue to move forward one step at a time. If you're ready for support, accountability, and practical next steps, you can learn more at whynotTodayMovement.com. And let's jump into this episode. So this episode today, I wanted to share something that I've learned a long time ago and ask you a question. When was the last time a business made you feel truly special? Or you had an interaction with somebody that just made you feel special? Mary Kay often said, imagine every person has a sign around their neck that says, make me feel special or make me feel important. And most businesses, what we do because of social media, we look at algorithms, we look at visibility, how many followers, sales tactics, automation. And yes, that measures who's looking at our stuff. But really what people are craving is connection, recognition, thoughtfulness, and blogging. And that is just so key that we're connecting with people. And in such a digital world, to be real and have conversations and be able to say hello to people and be nice to people, smile. Simple things make such a difference. I have recently read again is the book Unreasonable Hospitality. And if you haven't read it, highly recommend it. Although it's about a restaurant and a man that moved from, I think, busboy all the way up to owning and running the number one restaurant in the world. And he grew to number one. First, he was ranked in the top 50 and he was number 50 and he was so mad. He's like, how can I change things so I can be number one? And although his restaurant is amazing, it's in New York City, or I'm assuming it's amazing, I haven't been there. He decided to focus on being number one based on hospitality. And what he shares is just amazing. I think some of the things he does. And that's exactly what separates forgettable businesses from unforgettable ones. When was the time that you felt noticed? How did it feel when you were remembered? Have you ever been to a coffee shop and they know your name? How does that make you feel? When you feel welcomed, when you feel valued? Somebody anticipating your needs before you're asked. Isn't that amazing? Instead of, I went out to eat the other day, and because of this book is so in the forefront of what I've been thinking about, we went out to eat, and it's a great restaurant, love the food, and the server dropped the food off and never showed up again until he brought the check. Now, the French fries they brought were not up to their standard. I would love some ketchup. I'd ask somebody else for it. We wanted a refill on drinks. Nothing. Nobody was there. And so, are people anticipating your needs? Are you feeling seen instead of just processed? These days we're in such a hurry, but can you take time? And so people rarely remember those average experiences, but they remember the moments that they felt special, they felt important. And the business that grows through word of mouth are usually the businesses that create the emotional experiences. I had an experience. It was several years ago, and I may have even talked about it on this podcast. But my sister and I went to Hilton Head for an event that her company was sponsoring, or not her company, a hotel that she worked with was inviting people that booked their hotels. And so I went with her as her plus one. And it happened to be a couple weeks after my 50th birthday. And so we got there. And they didn't know who I was. I was not, other than I was her sister. We got there and they went above and beyond. And I have told this story so many times. what they did is when we got there, they checked us in. The contact came out, said hello. We got to the room. There was a personal note card, handwritten note. There was some wine glasses. It was a wine weekend was the theme, a lanyard, just all the extra stuff to make us feel special. That evening, they did a paint and sip on the beach, which was just amazing. It was down in Hilton Head. And then Saturday we got up and they had arranged, there was a wine festival going on that they had arranged for us to go be a part of. So before that, they had breakfast with a Bloody Mary bar. They gave us a tour of the hotel, and then they had a van. They took us to the wine venue. Now they had a VIP tent with special food, and they just wowed us. And I thought, okay, I'm impressed. But then it got better. So that night they had kind of a reception for all the guests that were there. And they showed their best stuff, the little things they could do. They had live music, which was nice. But then they also, now remember, I came on Friday. They didn't know who I was. And so that evening, they had a button they brought me that said happy 50th birthday. They had the entertainer, the guy playing guitar, sing happy birthday to me. And they had a champagne split for me. Now, they had to go out and do that Saturday, but that made such an impression. After the event that night, we went back to the room service knocked on the door, and they had an after party kit, which was like I think Advil, some fruit, tomato juice, something. I don't remember what was in it, but it was the extras. And then to top it off, at home, we had snow. And so they comped us another night stay. So instead of a one night, which they gave everybody else, we got 3 nights at this hotel. And they kept checking us. And they just made such an impression that I have been talking about that. It has been a long time. And so those are the things that make a difference. And so some of the stories from the book Unreasonable Hospitality, which I just love, is the hot dog story. And this is more famous than the food at the restaurant, I think. The owner, Will, was at the restaurant, and he had some guests that were from overseas, and they were overheard him talking about how they had eaten at all the top restaurants in New York City, but they hadn't had a hot dog on the street. So he ran out himself, grabbed a hot dog, brought it to the chef. Reluctantly, he plated it beautifully and gave it to the guests. And you know what? They remembered those things. And it was, paying attention, listening, and being responsive, listening to those opportunities to surprise people. Are there ways in your business you can surprise and delight people? And so, whether it's customer service, social media, networking, podcasts, clients, how can you surprise and delight? Another story he shared was some kids had come there with his parents for dinner, and wherever they were from, they had never experienced snow, and it was snowing. So they ran out and got sleds and a car and took them to a hill and let them go sledding. Now, this is another story that I love about Tiffany champagne flutes. So this shows the power of paying attention, doing the and then some, surprise and delight, and partnering with another company. So Will went to the Tiffany store and shared that a lot of their guests came to get engaged. And they'd always, of course, give them champagne, but they took it to the next level. After they had their champagne to toast their engagement, he would bring out the flutes they used in a beautiful blue Tiffany's box to take home with them. So they had that memory. So the things that they did would just make a difference. And people remembered it. So why does this matter now more than ever? Well, loneliness is such a big thing. There's so much disconnection. We're all online, digital overload. I think people are uncomfortable being around people anymore because we don't do it anymore. There's so much AI and automation, and just transactional marketing is happening. And so we lost that touch. One thing I love about Mary Kay is they taught us how to make people feel special, make them feel important. And we've lost some of that. I think that makes such a difference. The U.S. Surgeon General actually has a warning about loneliness and lack of connection. Human connection is becoming the competitive advantage. What can you do? Which used to be like the bar was so low the bar was high. Now we're down. Like the basic things can make a difference, smiling at people. So in a world where everything is becoming automated, genuine thoughtfulness can really stand out. So how can you make people feel special in your business? This podcast is all about action. So how can you, one, remember personal details? If you have a customer or client that is getting married, their kids are having babies. Do you remember their friends, their kids' names? If you have that relationship, in the day when I started Mary Kay a long time ago, we called our customers, we talked to people on the phone. I knew their families, I knew their husband's name. It's interesting since I have been doing this for a while. All these babies that I knew when I first started are now out of college, graduating, having babies themselves. And so what can you do to remember people's personal details? Like if you're on social media, it pops up their birthday on, can you do the and then some instead of just putting a thread, commenting like everybody else does? Can you send a private message, or do you have their phone number? Can you send them a quick text, call them, sing happy birthday? I got a couple people that call and sing me happy birthday on my birthday. Not many people do it. Do you have their address? Can you drop something in the mail? I was meeting with a friend of mine today, and she was talking about, she actually teaches and coaches kids as entrepreneurs. And she said 3 things that she does and she teaches is every day she has a post on social media. Every day she writes a personal note to someone, and then every day she makes a call, like picks up the phone and really talks to somebody. A second thing you can do is follow up unexpectedly. Check in after events, purchases, conventions. Reach out to somebody when you're thinking about them. Shoot them a text. One person in my inner circle, unfortunately, her father is sick and probably going to pass away soon. So I've been sending her texts. I don't expect a text back. I just wanted her to know that I'm thinking about her. And then how can you celebrate people publicly? Recognition matters. So if you're watching online, you see somebody got a promotion. If they did something spectacular, share their post. I shared somebody's post the other day that runs a nonprofit and was talking about all the things she did. So I shared it and did a shout out to her. And then she sent me a personal direct message on Facebook. Those things make a difference. Shouting out to people their success, things that happen, but that's paying attention and not just head down, working so hard that you're paying attention to people. Another thing you do is add the unexpected touch. Like I said, handwritten notes, a small gift, a voice message, you're thinking about them. We don't get calls that often. Call somebody. And then remove stress for people. How can you simplify the process for them to make it easier? Giving clear response or clear instructions, quick responses. How can you make things easier so your sales process is smooth? Like when you join the inner circle, go back to the unexpected touch, you get a welcome box. It's got some cool things. I often drop something in the mail to them. What can you do to make a difference? And then one thing that I think is so key, and it goes back to what Will does in Unexpected Hospitality, is listen. People tell you what matters if you pay attention. A great book is The 5 Love Languages, and there's one for couples, there's one for singles, there's one for businesses. I'm actually going to speak and be the speaker at a staff meeting for a big company for their C-suite employees and managers in July, and we're going to talk about love languages. Do people like notes? Do they like words of affirmation, gifts? What are those things? And sometimes a gift doesn't need to be expensive. It just means to show you care. So can you listen? People tell you what matters. And then make online interactions feel human. Reply thoughtfully instead of performing for algorithms. Really engage if people comment on something. As I add new friends to my Facebook accounts, I send them a direct message. I comment about mutual friends. There was somebody the other day that had a Buffalo shirt on, Buffalo Bills. I'm like, oh, I was born in Buffalo. Now, I've not lived in Buffalo since I was 2, but all of a sudden we had a connection. Somebody else sent me a message. We as a new friend connection. She goes, oh, you went to Virginia Tech? I went to Virginia Tech. How can you find those similar things? And it all makes you feel human. And then be present. People can feel when you're distracted. They know when you're looking around. Mary Kay, they often told a story of she would stand in line for hours greeting people, and you were focused. She was paying attention to you, not everybody else. And then always ask, how can I do the and then some? When I meet with somebody for a one-on-one, I always ask them, how can I support you? And I did that one day with somebody, and she said, nobody's ever asked me that, which is really sad. I ask it all the time. And I was with somebody yesterday and she asked me. And so, asking, how can you do the and then some? How can you give back? And so I could share stories after stories of ways in my business, in my life, that people have made a difference. And how can you make a difference? Like when you order a Mary Kay product and it comes from my office, often I ship it from Mary Kay now, but it comes in a cellophane bag with a curly ribbon. I do the and then some. I want to make sure people feel special. When you're a guest on my podcast, I send you a handwritten thank you note. I did that with one of my guests, and she's like, "You're a class act." I'm like, that should be the bottom level. It shouldn't be the top, a surprise. It's simple things. You can get people's addresses these days. My lunch, I always include a sticker or a bookmark or a piece of candy. When I started, there was a chocolate shop local to me. And so I would include one of their chocolates at the table for all my guests. And so many things that people, can make you can make other people feel special. And in networking, using people's name, asking them who they are. It's really not that hard. It's just paying attention and making it intentional. And so I really hope that I gave you some tips and ideas about how to make people feel special and important. I hope I make you feel special and important. I do this podcast to give back and share and hopefully give you some tidbits that help you grow your life, your business, and make a difference in your life. And so people may forget your sales pitch, but they rarely forget how you made them feel. So how can you make people feel special? And so think about that in growing your business, doing referrals, loyalty, relationships, community. Make people feel special. And so this week I ask you, I want you to ask yourself, how can I make one person feel special today? How can you impact another life and make a difference? Because guys, it just makes such a difference. And how can I make your life feel special? Let me know. Let me listen to the podcast, watch the podcast, and would love to get to know you better. And that's what I'm all about, community connection and taking action. So thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Why Not Today podcast. And if today's conversation encouraged you or gave you a new perspective, I would love for you to share this episode with a friend, post it on social media, leave a review. This is how we continue building this community and helping more women grow confidence and momentum. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, inconsistent, stuck, or just trying to figure everything out alone, I want you to know there is support available. Inside the Why Not Day community, workshops and coaching programs, we focus on simple systems, accountability, mindset, community, and taking consistent action so you can move forward with more clarity and less chaos. And I've created a free guide that's called What's Hard in Business and How to Make It Easier to help women entrepreneurs identify the challenges holding them back and simplify next steps. So you can download the free guide by visiting my website at whynottodaymovement.com and just entering your email. Now remember, progress does not come from having everything figured out. It comes from taking the next step. So ask yourself, why not today? And let me know how I can support you to grow your business or make you feel more special and important. Thanks again for watching, and why not today? Bye.